Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I'm with Ashok Gulati, a well-known agricultural economist and the Infosys Chair for Agriculture at ICRIER, which is the Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations. And today we are talking about the impact of the repeal of the farm laws. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday morning stunned the nation by repealing the 3 farm laws that had been on the anvil for the last year and a half. And we all know that thousands of farmers from Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh had been agitating on Delhi's borders. Mr. Gulati, we know the story, but your first comments on the impact of the repeal of these farm laws.
Well, impact in terms of economics, the things will keep going that they were going. In agriculture, there is not likely to be any impact because all these reforms were for potential impact. And if these reforms are not carried out, agriculture will keep going the way it was going at 3.5% per annum.
But that sounds really terrible when the Prime Minister, who's bent on revamping the not just the agricultural market, but also the economy. We're emerging from a COVID hit economy. So explain to us what that means.
Well, the political indication of this will be that he will go slow on reforms and perhaps more in terms of giving freebies. Because that nobody can object if anything is given free to people, but how long you can do that when the crude prices have risen and all that buffer that he had for 6-7 years in his initial years of government, that buffer of savings from the crude prices have literally gone, and now crude prices are becoming a major problem. It's raising the cost of production. It is raising the cost of transportation everywhere. So inflationary pressures are going to, pick up momentum.
So Mr. Gulati, are you saying that this is the end of the agricultural reform and that the Prime Minister won't have the courage to pursue it any further?
Well, I can't say end of reforms because there are many things which are non-controversial. If he is creating, let's say, 10,000 FPOs, farmer producer organizations, or if he is spending on agriculture infrastructure fund, AIF, for 1 lakh crores, those are non-controversial and that's preparing the ground. But you can create an infrastructure or institutions, but if you don't let the markets function properly, then all those investments will not pay you fully back. That's the problem.
So the point is that the farmers across Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh, from where the thousands of farmers, as we know, have been agitating for more than a year, they have all welcomed the repeal. Sure. Now, who is in the right and who is in the wrong? You are clearly saying that India needed these farm laws. The farmers are happy that they have been repealed. So what's going on?
As an individual farmer, I feel that whatever I produce, government should take away at an assured price so that I don't have any market risk.
Right.
Take the case of Punjab, since you mentioned that. Yeah. Wheat and rice is the main cycle, right? Much of the production is of wheat and rice, which are both the MSP system. Yeah. Now you keep on procuring. As on 1st of October, government had stocks of 81 million tons of wheat and rice compared to the buffer stock norm of 31 million tons. So you have literally 2.5 times more than what is needed. The cost of this, the capital locked in this excess is almost 1,50,000 crores. 1,50,000 crores just sitting there without a purpose. This is the excess stock I'm talking. Now, this is the result of these policies. And then you look at what is happening to the water table in Punjab. Water table is receding by a foot a year at least. And in central Punjab, it is almost going down by a meter a year. It's a disaster, environmental disaster. You look at what is happening when they grow rice, continuously flooding the field. There is a methane that is emitted into the atmosphere, which is 80 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. And then on top of that, then you have stubble burning, and on 7th of November, Delhi's pollution, 48% was contributed by stubble burning in the neighboring states. So if you don't change the system, which perhaps at that time in 60s and 70s when we needed so much of grain was right, but the times have changed. You have massively overproduction of wheat and rice. Mountains of grain are rotting without a purpose. Now, if you want to continue with that system, the system has massive inefficiency. Now, as an individual farmer, I say, मेरे से उठाओ, चाहे उसको खड्डे में डालो, चाहे कहीं भी डालो, मेरा सिरदर्दी नहीं है. But you and me or others are paying taxes on these scarce resources of the country.
लेकिन सर एक मिनट, फार्मर जो है, किसान जो है, वो अपने पैर पे तो कुल्हाड़ी नहीं बांधने वाला. वो अब 1 साल के ऊपर वो दिल्ली के ठंड में, बारिश में इतनी मतलब बुरा हाल उसको भी हो रहा है. वो उधर बैठा हुआ है, उसकी फैमिली बैठी हुई है, उनके बच्चे बैठे हुए हैं. More than 700 farmers have committed suicide. अब ये तो नहीं है ना कि they don't know कि उनके लिए what is good and what is bad.
नहीं, देखिए, short term private gains are different. So if the water table is going down there, now every farmer knows water table is going down, but देखा जाएगा जो कल होगा. So keep on giving free power more and more and more, and ultimately water will not be available, or it will be so much degraded. So as a society, you have to think. It's like in Delhi, if you keep on adding all the vehicles and pollution keeps increasing, as a person, single person, I'll manage my own thing. But the moment you go out, it's a suicidal thing that we are living in a gas chamber today.
But sir, why is it that the government, I mean, firstly, they introduced the laws were not even passed in parliament. Pehle to ordinance laye gaye the. So what effort was made to talk to the farmers and to tell them that these are the problems?
This is where I think the government goofed up. They failed miserably in communicating what the potential impact of these reforms is. And opposition parties and many activists created a narrative. This is a sellout to the corporate world and they will take away your lands and whatnot. It's nothing can be farther from truth. So
it's not a sellout to the corporate world.
I mean, question is, don't you want the private sector to invest in agriculture at all? Who is going to build the storage capacity? Who is going to build the logistics? Mm-hmm. You know, you need massive investment in storage facilities and the logistics and the cold chains and so on and so forth. And that is only the private sector that will come. Will the government keep doing this?
The government doesn't have money.
No. How much money? Wheat and rice they can't handle. If they start procuring all the commodities, it will go broke. It's already broke.
So you're saying that the government failed miserably in explaining to the farmers that it would be in their benefits to have these farm laws.
Yeah, you know, if you take them from the beginning with you and say that this is the way we are thinking, if you have any problem, you know, many people say, oh, agriculture is a state subject. Why the center should come in between? Marketing reforms are a state subject. But why then MSP should be a responsibility of the center? Let each state decide its MSP and hold the stocks, and within 3 years they will know what the problems of the system are.
So perhaps this is what should have been done right at the start.
Yeah, so the question is, you have to sit down with your stakeholders, discuss with them, and then come up. Now, there have been discussion. It's not that there is no discussion earlier. You know, each finance minister's meeting before the budget, people used to ask, give us freedom. Why do you impose all these restrictions on us? Now, when they wanted to do, but when the onion prices went up, immediately government put an export control, stocking limits, even 3 weeks, 4 weeks back on edible oils. So government doesn't have the credibility that it wants to do market reforms.
But why do you think the government doesn't have the credibility? After all, it did issue an ordinance on these 3 farm laws.
Yeah, because the moment prices go up, you know, farmers want higher prices and consumers want lower prices. For them, wheat and rice is being given to 67% population at 2 rupees and 3 rupees a kilo, when it is costing, rice is costing more than 40 rupees a kg to the government. And market in Bihar is giving you anywhere 25 to 30 rupees a kg. You can easily get rice better than what is in the PDS system. So issue is that, okay, consumers want lower prices, farmers want higher prices.
Mhm.
How do you balance the interests of the two within the budget that you have?
Right.
Now, what happens is when the prices start going up, exports are booming, or there is, let's say, a drought, prices will go up. Then immediately government says, oh, traders are taking advantage of this, put stocking limits. So when you put stocking limits, the storage facilities cannot be built because nobody is going to invest if the silos are empty. Then at the time of the harvest, when farmer sells much of his produce, prices crash to the lowest, right? So it actually hurts farmers more at that time because that's the time when they will be selling and the prices are the lowest. You go beyond Punjab and Haryana, where the government procures everything. And this is a legacy of 1960s and 70s, right? The Green Revolution thing. But you go to Eastern UP or Bihar or Assam or Odisha or any of the Eastern states, the prices at the harvest time are 15 to 20% below what the MSP system is. So if there is a procurement that is needed and if you want to help the small farmers, it is in the Eastern belt. What you did for Punjab and Haryana during 60s and 70s, that perhaps is a need of the Eastern India at that time.
But those farmers are not complaining.
No, they don't know what is all this fight going on. You talk to a farmer in Bihar or Assam or even West Bengal or Odisha, they are not even interested in this talk because they have been facing only the markets,
So why is it that the government was unable to explain something that sounds very simple and logical?
Well, I think government was in a hurry and they thought as the 91 reforms were through stealth, even this can be through the ordinance route at the time of, pandemic. Actually, the experience, because they had to suspend the existing laws during the pandemic so that people don't congregate in the mandis, and the experience was very good because the supply chains in India did not break down for the food. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster. Many countries experienced that, right? So they found that this experience is better. And therefore, already, in 2015, 16, they had sent the Model Reform Act to the states to, adopt. Some states went, 20%, some states adopted 80%, and so on and so forth. It was going on. So they thought now is the time to go whole hog on that. And that's what perhaps led to it. But somehow people became suspicious. The farmers and the opposition parties in India always have to oppose, even if it was in their own manifesto to do the same thing. It is clearly written in the manifesto of the Congress that they will repeal, all these existing APMC laws and all that.
Mr. Gulati, you referred to the 1991 reforms, and some time ago, I interviewed Montek Singh Ahluwalia, who in 1991 was the finance secretary to Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was then finance minister. And anyway, the whole story and how the reforms were brought about. And the Congress party itself was very much divided on the economic reform at the time. But one thing struck me, which is what Mr. Ahluwalia said, which is that both then Prime Minister Narasimha Rao and of course, Dr. Manmohan Singh himself explained again and again and again and again the benefits of the economic reforms to all the political parties in the opposition as well as to the Congress itself. So this kind of explanation or conversations did not happen this time.
This is Montek's version. You pick up literature. 95% people will say 91 reforms were by stealth, right? Montek is a great friend, nice person, but that is his version to defend his position that they consulted. Did they consult the country? 91 reforms went through because they were driven to the wall. There was no foreign exchange. Only 10 days, 15 days foreign exchange was there. So the crisis was right on their head. So they had to carry out the major reforms. And the biggest reform was exchange rate correction and trade policies. Agriculture, they said, no, this we can't handle. So industrial policy and trade policy and exchange rate correction. Now, those are macro type of reforms. But even on industrial delicensing and trade policy reforms, you remember our industry for 10 years, the Bombay Club kept on opposing that he's deindustrializing the country.
That's right.
Remember that for 10 years.
Rahul Bajaj, yes, who led the
Rahul Bajaj, even CII at that time. And yes, Dr. Manmohan Singh had to explain to everyone and Montague had to explain to everyone. One big difference was that, Dr. Manmohan Singh had extreme humility and people could still listen to him and he would not make it as his prestige issue, and he was in a way managing the show. The Prime Minister was somebody else. And he could explain to the Prime Minister, if you don't carry out these reforms, thank you very much, manage your economy. And the economy was in doldrums. It was collapsing. What was the rate of growth and what was the rate of inflation? And hardly any foreign exchange in your kitty. So you were literally drowning at that time. But in case of this, agriculture is going on at its normal speed. There is no crisis of that nature that you don't have food to eat.
But you said Dr. Manmohan Singh was very humble and that he was willing to go over and over and over the same conversation again. How would you compare that with what is happening today?
Every person is different. And I feel humility, which brings actually a much bigger power to you. The more humble you are, you can make the other person understand that. Humility. Otherwise, if you say, no, what I'm doing is the right thing, that somehow is interpreted as your arrogance, and that personality clash. But everybody is different in this world. And Margaret Thatcher, for example, when she carried out reforms, she bulldozed literally, and so many people went on strikes and this and that. And so there are cases of success of bulldozing, and there are cases of success of doing it very humbly and in a low-key manner.
How do you think Prime Minister Modi has done it?
Well, if he had succeeded, then it was fine, but he got stuck. Somehow the opposition created a narrative and he had to take it back, and we have to see whether it is full stop or whether he will come back with a different package after some time with a better consultation. If he comes back with wider consultation and a better package, I think he has learned some lessons out of this experience and he has become wiser. If not, fine, the Indian economy will keep on moving and, inefficiencies are there. But
what kind of lessons do you think he would have learned?
Well, the thing is, when you are carrying out economic reforms, you have to pick up the momentum of growth. You have to create efficiency in the system so that you are globally competitive. Because when growth goes up, one is your domestic demand, but you also have to capture the export demand, whether it was China or Japan or other countries, export the global markets. And global markets you can capture only when you are globally competitive, right? And that globally competitive is the issue. Because unless you have better agri-value chains, for example, in the country, your logistics costs are much higher than the rest of the world. Your storage costs are higher, your power cost is higher. So you have to get that, in a proper shape. And that is what all reforms are, to make the system competitive. Otherwise, even the industry in India wanted 300% protection. In 91, there were industries going to 100% protection, 200% protection, even 300% protection. So who wants to give up that?
So you feel that PM Modi should be more Manmohan Singh and less Margaret Thatcher?
That's two putting extremes, but he can be in the middle. Also a hybrid, at times you have to bend and be humble, and at times you have to be tough and get the job done. Remember that those who have been gaining from the current system. I'll give you one little example. The public distribution system for which all this paraphernalia of procurement, stocking, and distribution is. When we did the study for our FCI, the major thing, 46% was the leakage, 46%. So whatever government is giving from the top to the bottom to the poor in the name of the poor, more than 40% leaks away. Then they started fixing, oh no, you have to have fingerprinting, POS machines, this and that. You go to the rural areas, even today I was talking to people in Bihar, and they say, PDS wala, he will give me ration once in 2 months. So 50% still goes away, literally. So massive leakages, but in the name of the poor. So the narrative is we are helping the poor. Fine. And how much is the leakage out of that? Nobody is counting. So these inefficiencies need to be checked. The stocking I gave you today, you have stocks which are worth 150,000 crores, excess stocks lying in the godowns of FCI without a purpose. These are the massive inefficiencies. So if you change the system, you will save these resources. You can use it wisely for the benefit of the farmer.
But so, we saw over the last year, we saw how the Prime Minister himself called the protesters, the farmer protesters, he called them Andolan GV, which is basically a very pejorative way of saying to them, ki aap log idhar baithe hue hain, Delhi ke charo taraf. But Andolan GV is a critical word, isn't it? Then some people said they are Khalistanis. Other people, Piyush Goyal, the Commerce Minister, called them other names. So I think to be fair to the farmers, why should they be sitting over there when they don't really know exactly the problem? And tab upar se aap gaaliyan kha rahe
hain. This is where a different approach. What you feel in private is different than what you speak in public. Okay, you have to be cautious, because if you tell somebody Andolan GV ho ji aap ex Khalistani or whatever terms, I never use those terms. Okay, then you are actually asking for trouble. Okay, because then the agitators feel much more offended. So they don't want to listen to you in that situation. And that is where I think the strength of Dr. Manmohan Singh was. He would never utter these types of words. He will keep quiet. So I think silence is gold in such situations, whatever you want to do. My feeling is when the agitation and the consultations were going on, it should have been elevated at a higher level when it was not being resolved at the level of Agriculture Minister. And perhaps that would have satisfied, some of the questions of the agitating farmers. But there is always politics on both sides. We know that very well. And if the agenda is very different, now they will say farm laws are out. Okay, we want MSP to be legal. That was not at all anything in the farm laws. Now you raise another demand. Okay, fine, keep on. Now, if we do that, how many commodities? Why not also for milk, and why not also for eggs, and why not also for chicken and fish and all commodities? Why those farmers are facing the markets? If government has to announce MSP for everything and buy everything, let the government do that, and then the China border, somebody else should take care of it.
So 2 questions to this, sir. The first is that you felt that when the farmers were demanding ki Pradhan Mantri humse aake mile, humse baatcheet kare, perhaps there was some need for the government for the government to take cognizance of what the farmers were saying, and perhaps the Prime Minister could have gone to meet them.
Yeah, if you recall, I think in the last interview that I had with you, I had said that if Prime Minister wants to break the deadlock, he should go to the Gurdwara or Singhu border and meet the farmers right there, because these farmers are quite, emotional. And if he gives them respect, he will in return get respect, and they will listen. But if that is not done, anyway, that's past, so it's gone.
So that was a mistake that the government committed. It should have been.
In post-mortem, we can say 20 things, what was the mistake and what is the...
But what is interesting is that the Prime Minister, that the BJP has such a big mandate in Parliament. It has more than 2/3.
Yeah.
So it's not as if, unlike Narasimha Rao, who ran a minority government when the economic reform was unveiled, in this, Prime Minister Modi leads a majority government in power.
And maybe that's whether a boon or a bane, because then you try to ignore all the criticism, all the other ideas and opinions that are coming in. So you don't spend so much time in convincing people, because you can get it through in the parliament. So bring the ordinance and then get it through the parliament with a voice vote. And that's where people feel offended. I think the lesson that will come is wider consultation, have some patience, have some, I would say politeness, humility. And it may take a little more time, because India is a very argumentative society, and we block any change. That's a pity. And one of the reasons why China is China today, because there is no debate, just bulldoze everything. But do you want...
Yeah, so you were part of the Supreme Court appointed committee on the 12th of January, when the Supreme Court basically said, okay, they are putting a freeze. Matlab, that's not the words that they used, but they said, theek hai, abhi dekhi jayegi. On abeyance, absolutely. Those are, and then the Supreme Court put up a 4-member committee, and you were part of that. Yeah. Now, what was your experience in that committee?
We consulted literally farmer organizations all over the country. We listed how many farmer organizations are there, unions are there, and we invited their representatives. 3-4 times we also invited these very agitating farmers, but they said we are not interested in talking to the committee, which is fine, that's their will. I respect that. And I left everything, literally all my professional work and other personal works, I left, and we devoted in a very genuine manner, because all 40 years of my work is for how to help the farmer. My entire work of lifetime is how to help the farmer. And Mr. Anil Ghanwat, he is actually a farmer activist, Sharad Joshi's outfit. And they've been fighting all these. I'm an academic, he is an activist, and we were all for the farmer. What are the best ways to give to the farmer? And we submitted our report to the Honorable Supreme Court on 19th of March, within the time that was given to us. But I don't know, we were asked that we cannot speak about what is in the report. Only thing we can say is that we have submitted the report. So I have not spoken on what the report has. And we had expected the Supreme Court that it will open up and discuss with the farmers, and if there can be a resolution in between. But that time is gone. So today the report is
infructuous in a sense.
Yeah, so it doesn't.
But perhaps going forward, sir, what do you think? How do you think this is going to unfold? I mean, now the farm laws are repealed. The farmers are saying that it has to be done in Parliament, and all that will happen. I'm sure the Prime Minister will take it back.
I doubt, this committee that he's talking about setting up may take 6 months, 1 year to prepare any reasonable blueprint for change. And to me, this is not economics. This is, the repeal could be triggered by the state elections that are coming in. And a lot depends upon what happens in those state elections. So I don't think he will bring in any major thing. So my take on this is the reforms in agriculture will slow down. There will be more freebies. Okay, you can have this. This is the easiest thing anybody can do, right? But where are the resources? And then the next government will have to be whichever the government comes, the implications of these freebies. That's what the politics of the day is.
So economists like you, agricultural economists like you, believe that it's politics that has won out over agricultural reform.
It will always be politics first and the economics later. because for the politician, the policymaker, remaining in power is the first thing.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, remaining in power, there's nothing wrong with.
But how much damage they do to the economy, especially in the year of election, you have seen they will do loan waiver, they will do everything. This is literally, I think, Election Commission should be coming down heavily. Anybody announcing all these freebies, that's a pure bribe, I take it. You know, so that's a pity in the Indian democracy that just before the election they will announce all these freebies.
So now this demand for MSP, minimum support prices, is limited to wheat and rice, or
no. Well, at present there are 23 commodities,
right,
for which MSP is announced. But effectively, the procurement is done for wheat and rice, especially in 4 or 5 states. For wheat, basically 3-4 states, and for rice, about 6-7 states. Right? But the rest of the country doesn't go by MSP. Lately, during the Modi period, actually, they started off doing some procurement of pulses and a little bit of oilseeds. Pulses, because when pulses production suddenly increased in 16-17, they were importing 6 million tons of pulses, and domestic production also increased by 6 million tons. The prices had collapsed. And that is when I think we were the ones we said, government, either it should open up import, stocking limits and all that. They were following the policies of a deficit era, and suddenly there was a massive surplus. So at that time, they introduced this procurement, which in earlier years, hardly anything was done. In fact, during the Modi period, there has been more procurement done than any government in the past. Wheat, rice, pulses, and oilseed. So, but despite that, the narrative is, procurement is going to stop, and MSP is going to stop, and APMC mandis are going to be dismantled. So that's
basically the Modi government is not able to put out its message and all these.
That's right. That's what I've been saying. So all through that, it's a poor communication.
So going forward, do you think that, once the elections are done, both in UP, Punjab and the other states, these are, of course, the 2 big elections that matter to the farmers in these states. Yeah. But I'm just wondering, going forward, there is no stopping the Prime Minister from saying that jo BJP ke ruled states hai, they should implement, because in any case,
they should have done that even earlier, because the Model Act, when it was sent to the states before these ordinances, there has been a Model Act for market reforms, and that was sent to the states. So when BJP was controlling almost 14-15 states, they should have said all the states should pass this so that investments should start coming there, and others will realize that they are missing out. They can still do that.
They can still do that.
Yeah. But I don't think now the narrative is not in their favor. So even in the BJP ruled states, the opposition will say, look, they could not do at the center, we made them bend, and now they are doing in the state. So my feeling and assessment is that he will not touch market reforms for the rest of his term. Which will be a pity, because then the loser will be the farmer himself.
Dr. Ashok Gulati, thank you so much for your time, for speaking to ThePrint, and for explaining all these very complex issues. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.